ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
Hi, it's PK here, host of the new politics podcast, Politics Now. I'll be joined by the ABC's sharpest political minds to break down the biggest stories of the day. It's called Politics Now, and you can find it and follow it on the ABC Listen app.
Hi, it's Sam here. Now the election campaign has begun, I wanted to ask you a favour to help us shape our coverage on ABC News Daily. Which policies do you want explained? What's most important to you? I'll have details at the end of the episode on how you can take part.
Well, it is finally on. After weeks of speculation, it looks like Australians will be heading to the polls on the 3rd of May. So here we go. So the Prime Minister is now leaving the lodge. So this is it.
Boris, this is Australia's democratic tradition here. That car carrying the Prime Minister heading down to see Sam Mostyn this morning for the formalities to set the election.
The sun has now risen. It's risen also on the election campaign. You saw just moments ago C1, the Prime Minister's car arriving here at Government House.
Oh, there he is, the Prime Minister leaving the Governor-General's place. Nice little wave, there we go, in the car. It's not the most gripping TV, is it? But we are watching democracy being made.
Yeah, well, anticipation and edification probably beckons shortly. Expecting him to appear behind me any second.
Ready to go? You bet. Born ready. My fellow Australians, this morning I visited the Governor-General and Her Excellency has accepted my advice that an election be held on Saturday, 3rd of May 2025.
In 5 weeks' time, Australians will be heading to the polls. After a visit to the Governor-General by the Prime Minister, the campaigning began in earnest. So, who will convince Australians they deserve to lead the country for the next 3 years? Anthony Albanese or Peter Dutton? Today, election analyst Casey Briggs on what voters are thinking as politicians begin the hard sell. I'm Sam Hawley on Gadigal land in Sydney. This is ABC News Daily. Casey, the moment we've been waiting for, it's arrived. Well, I think some of us are more excited about this than others, of course, but you are really excited, I assume.
Yeah, Sam, I think some people would like it to be all over and done with before it's even begun. But for some of us, this is what we professionally live for. Right now, I am standing on a bridge in Brisbane. Over the Brisbane River, I can see Griffith to my left, the electoral seat of Griffith, and to my right, I can see the seat of Brisbane. So I'm straddling two divisions, both of them at the moment, held by the Greens, but major parties, Labor and Liberal, would like to pick both of them up if they could in May.
All right, well, there is a lot for us to unpack. Anthony Albanese, of course, he stood up in the Prime Minister's courtyard a short time after visiting the Governor-General.
Only Labor has the plan to make you better off over the next 3 years. Only Labor is acting on the cost of living. Only a vote for Labor will keep your wages growing. Take 20% off your student debt and cut taxes again and again for every taxpayer next year and the year after.
This is a really important pitch to voters, isn't it? This first message after the election is called. So what was he saying?
I mean, that's right, Sam. This is the day that voters, many of them are tuning in for the first time. It's the day that the leaders really try to set the terms of the contest as they would like it to be fought. This is a day you're going to hear leaders say the word choice a lot because they're trying to outlay the terms of this contest and really set up what is the dividing line between Anthony Albanese in this case and opposition leader Peter Dutton.
Your vote has never been more important, and your choice has never been more clear. This election is a choice between Labor's plan to keep building or Peter Dutton's promise to cut. That is the choice. That is your choice.
Well, this election is a choice about who can better manage our economy, And of course, the question that Australians need to ask is, are you better off today, is our country better off today than 3 years ago? Generations of Australians have built their lives and our country on the belief that if you work hard, you can get ahead and build a better future for your children. However, right now, Australia is going backwards.
Anthony Albanese has spoken a lot this morning about the cost of living and the many dimensions of that. Housing, income tax, that is, we know, far and away the number one issue in people's minds across the entire country, but especially in the kinds of seats that are going to decide this election.
Yeah, there's no doubting that cost of living is going to be the absolute key to this election campaign. But the PM was quizzed about this, wasn't he, that there really is no voter in the country that would say that they're better off now than they were 3 years ago. That's a problem for him.
I mean, it is. Let's, and that's what Peter Dutton has been talking about for quite some time now. Are you better off now than you were when the coalition was in government? What was Anthony Albanese's response to that? Well, he's emphasised the turbulent seas in the global environment at the moment, quite a bit of uncertainty that has been affecting. He's arguing it would have been worse under the coalition, and he's pointing to, well, the surprise tax cut that was announced in this week's budget and legislated. Now that the coalition is planning to repeal those tax cuts, well, he's saying you will pay higher taxes under the coalition.
If Peter Dutton had had his way and his opposition to our cost of living measures had been put in place, Australians today would be $7,200 worse off on average. He has no plans for cost of living relief going forward.
So that's the argument he's mounting against Peter Dutton's preferred framing of this election.
Yeah, he was also flashing his Medicare card around, so I assume health is going to be a big deal.
I think it is, and I think it's an issue that's maybe gone a little bit under the radar in the last few months. We know healthcare has constantly ranked high on those lists of most important issues facing the nation, and we know a lot of voters view it as a cost of living issue. I've watched some focus groups for a project that we'll be able to share with ABC viewers and listeners in the coming weeks, and focus groups of undecided voters are bringing up access and affordability of healthcare as a really important issue in some of those outer suburban seats that we know are going to be a real focus in this election. So it's no accident, it's no surprise that Anthony Albanese's brought that up today and tried to tie it to his personal story.
This card is part of Australian values. The Australian values that say when Kerry Packer has a heart attack, he goes to the emergency department, went to the emergency department at Royal Prince Alfred Hospital, the same hospital that I went to when I had my car accident, when I was leader of the Labor Party. On that evening, I was in the same room that my mum was in.
Well, of course, Casey, it's thought the PM announced the election early on a Friday morning to take the wind out of Peter Dutton's budget in reply speech, which was delivered on Thursday night. Politicians can be so mean, can't they?
Yes, setting the date of the election is, of course, something that is the gift of the Prime Minister. And, you know, I think sometimes a lot can be made of, or when's the election going to be and when's it going to advantage one side or the other? And in this case, I guess we've seen a Prime Minister go for something that is as much about taking the oxygen and taking the, you know, disrupting the strategy of their opponent rather than anything else.
Yeah, but Peter Dutton, he did unveil two pretty big policies in that budget reply speech, didn't he, which could really give him some momentum. Just tell me about those.
Yeah, and these are also aimed around cost of living. So we've got sort of two alternative pictures now for how these two alternative governments will reduce the cost of living for voters. So here's what Peter Dutton's announced. Rather than proposed income tax cuts from Labor, the opposition would halve the fuel excise. This is a government tax on the price of fuel that was, you know, historically tied to maintaining road infrastructure. But it's quite a big excise, 50 cents a litre. That would go down to 25 cents a litre. The opposition says that would save motorists $14 a week.
For a household with one car filling up once a week, that's a savings of about $14 a week, or around $700 over the year. For a household with two cars filling up once a week, that is a savings of $28 a week, or around $1,500 over 12 months.
Obviously, it depends on how much driving you do and what kind of car you have as to how much you'd actually save there. The kinds of voters he's got in mind, that would be a larger saving to their budget in a shorter, and it would come sooner than the Labor tax cuts are offering. The other thing that the opposition leader announced last night was what's called a domestic gas reservation policy. There's a lot of complexity to this, but basically it's a promise that would force the gas giants to set aside some of their supply, as much as about 20% of their supply, for use domestically. It wouldn't be able to be exported. And Peter Dutton says that will bring down the wholesale price of gas, and that would flow on to people's household budgets as well.
The Coalition understands what Labor won't. You can't run a full-time and functioning economy using part-time and unreliable power. Under Labor, the energy crisis and therefore your pain will continue. Under the Coalition, energy will become affordable and reliable again.
All right. And of course, he did hold a press conference after the election date was unveiled. Again, cost of living, right?
Cost of living, cost of living, cost of living.
Our plan will deliver a stronger economy with low inflation and affordable homes in safer communities. A stronger, safer, better Australia. When it comes to the economy, inflation, energy, housing and security, Labor has simply failed to deliver. And unfortunately, Mr Albanese is too weak and Labor is too incompetent to fix the problems that they've created and that are facing our country today.
All of the data is telling us this is a cost of living election. I think we're all going to get sick of talking about it, even though it is the number one thing that people are worried about. We're starting to see now some differences in what the pitches around cost of living are. That's what's really interesting this week, because up to now, the opposition have been playing a game of basically match what Labor was proposing on a whole series of fronts. If Labor came up with what they thought would be a popular policy, well, the Coalition will start to match it. Now we're starting to see some differentiation. We're starting to see some differences in that pitch, and we haven't heard a whole lot from the opposition yet on issues like housing. I suspect we will hear more on housing from Peter Dutton, so we don't know exactly what that offering will be. But again, I expect it will come back to what is the cost of housing and how can people secure themselves a home in a more affordable way. That will be what the pitch is framed around.
All right. Well, Casey, you have been out and about across the country gauging voter intentions. So just tell me about that and what you've gathered from talking to voters.
Well, what we've been trying to do is really get an understanding of how Australian politics has changed. And it's changed pretty fundamentally in the last couple of decades, especially. You know, people would be aware that people are voting increasingly for people that are not, candidates that are not from major parties. We're seeing independents breaking through. We're seeing minor parties breaking through. At the last election, about a third of people voted for minor parties and independents. And that is, well, it's unheard of in the sort of modern political era in Australia. So we've been trying to work out what is driving some of that and what's driving the sort of less attachment we have to our major political parties. You know, the world is getting more complicated. Our lives are lived very differently to what they were 20 or 30 years ago. And it's one of the consequences is we're seeing this fragmentation, and you see it now in the electoral map. You see it now in all of these seats that, you know, at one point in time would have been a straightforward, simple contest between Labor and the Coalition. These days, you've got many more independents and minor parties contesting those seats. Really, Australian politics in 2025 does not work the same way that it did even in, say, 2007. It's been a really fundamental shift in how voters think and behave.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So in a sense, that all means that Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton will need to be working even harder if they want to secure a majority government. And of course, there are already predictions of a hung parliament. Tell me, what are the polls showing us right now?
The polls are really tight. Everything looks actually quite close and quite competitive. Either side could win. And the thing that makes it even a little bit more unpredictable is the fact that there's just this extraordinarily high number of swing and soft voters at the moment. We've seen it sort of growing in line with those trends we were talking about, people considering other options beyond the major parties, people really sort of reflecting on what they want from their vote. So that's been a long-term trend. But at the moment, I'll give you one data point. Resolve does polling quite a lot around asking people how firm are you with your vote? Are you locked in, or are you open to changing your mind still? In February 2025, so not that long ago, 39% of people told Resolve that they're uncommitted, they're not locked in. February 2022, just before the last federal election, that number was 22%. So we've got far more people now saying they're uncommitted, they're not sure, they might change their mind. And that creates a lot more interesting contests. It means there's a lot more softness in the electorate. What it also means is the next 5 weeks are very important for both of the major party leaders, especially, to really craft and define what is their offering and who are they as leaders, because there is a lot more softness in the electorate. There are a lot more people still thinking about which way they will go than there normally are, or there historically have been.
And tell me, where will the election be won or lost then? Which states matter the most?
One of the key places we'll be looking is the outer suburbs of our capital cities. So in Sydney, it's in Western Sydney. It's seats like Parramatta, seats like Reid, and then even on the Central Coast and in the Hunter region, Paterson, Shortland, Dobell, seats like that are often swing seats, but we are interested in seeing how large those swings will be, because some of the polls have been suggesting the swings in those parts of the country might be larger than what we're seeing in other parts of the country. Victoria as well, polls are there suggesting that the swing in Victoria might be larger than any other state. Obviously, we'll find out in 5 weeks' time. And then maybe we look to the West, where, well, look, Labor wouldn't have a majority in Parliament now without Western Australia. It saw the biggest swing toward Labor 3 years ago. So you would think the coalition would hope to gain back at least some of the 4 seats they lost there. But as I say, there are seats all over the country that could be in play. Lyons in Tasmania, Sturt and Boothby in South Australia, Lingiari in the NT, and a host of them in Queensland as well.
Well, Casey, you're going to be very busy in the next 5 weeks, but a lot of people, they won't really want to start engaging with this right at the moment. But it is a really important democratic moment, isn't it? Why should we all engage?
I mean, this is the one chance every 3 years that everyone gets to weigh in on how this country is run, and everyone will have to because of compulsory voting, of course, as well. People can find it frustrating. People can find that politics is not operating in the kinds of ways and doing the kinds of things that they think it should be doing. We're seeing that increasingly the case in polling. People are getting, disappointed. They're disaffected with the way politics works. But at the end of the day, this is the time when you do get a say. This is the time when you can push your candidates and really weigh them up and decide who best represents you, who best represents your values. But we're all going to have to do it. So take the time, think about it, grab a sausage on the way out,
yes.
and look forward to what could be a really interesting campaign in the next 5 weeks.
Casey Briggs is a data journalist and election analyst. Now, each week of the election campaign, we will dedicate an episode to explaining a policy and the politics of an issue that's important to you, our listener. So, tell us what you've heard from the major political parties and what you want to know about this election. We need topics and policy areas that a lot of people will be interested in, and we want to hear your voice. Using the voice memo or voice recorder app on your phone, tell us in about 30 seconds or so what we should unpack with an expert or a journalist. Then email it to us on ABC News Daily at abc.net.au, or send your phone number and we might just give you a call. This episode was produced by Sydney Peed. Audio production by Sam Dunn. Our supervising producer is David Cody. I'm Sam Hawley. ABC News Daily will be back again on Monday. Thanks for listening.